Feminism is what we say it is. And we say that feminism is the problem. Putting the conversation where it needs to be, this is the Vanguard Report. Hello, welcome everybody. This is episode number 20 of the Vanguard Report. I am your host, Fidelbogen, and with me today is, well, no, actually he's not with me today. Nick was detained elsewhere. His life has been chaotic recently. Wasn't able to get here today. Just couldn't quite make it in. So I'm going to be flying solo for this episode number 20 of the Vanguard Report. That's our first little inconvenience for this episode. The second little inconvenience is disaster strikes again. 3 or 4 episodes ago, I had an entire script for an entire episode get swallowed up by file corruption. And guess what? It just happened again. I lost an entire scripted episode to file corruption. After all that hard work I put into writing the thing and thinking about the thing, and then suddenly, poof, it was gone. So, again, I had about 45 minutes to pull together something to fill this hour for this episode. I'm going to do the best I can, just me alone, winging it, and no Nick. Oh, ho, 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 poor, pitiful me. All right.
You sound like a victim.
I sound like a victim? So, yes, I'm a victim of fate. I don't need to blame my victimhood on people. I can just blame it on the gods or blame it on fate or something abstract.
We call it, in feminist circles, they call that patriarchy.
Oh, that's right, the big spook, patriarchy. Okay, well, can I blame it on the patriarchy too?
You can blame it on the patriarchy too.
That's right, patriarchy.
After all,
patriarchy hurts men.
Made those computers.
Oh, that's right, the patriarchy made those computers and made the internet, and patriarchy hurts men too, doesn't it?
That's right.
But I guess I can't blame it on the matriarchy now, can I?
No, the only successful matriarchies were destroyed by the patriarchy millions of years ago.
Oh, that's
according
right.
To people like Mary Daly.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Well, she's a person I respect highly. She's near and dear to my heart.
Don't you know, when the world was covered in the virgin mists of the way back, it was nothing but beautiful matriarchies everywhere until the men rose up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh well. Oh, James, you're too clever for me.
Not clever. Okay.
I'm not feeling too terribly clever today. I'm feeling a little bit ragged, but understandably. But anyway, I'm going to fill this episode mainly with reading some stuff. I mean, that's a good, quick, easy way to fill the time. But I thought I would start off talking about an article that recently appeared at Jezebel.com. You got it? That's right.
Yeah.
Cue number one. It's showing up in your chat window right now.
Ding.
All right. Hope Solo shouldn't be playing professional sports either. This article was written by one Aaron Gloria Ryan, one of the writers on staff over there at Jezebel.com. You can go read the thing if you want. Well, basically, before I start talking about that, we've all heard about the Ray Rice case by now. And I think we've all heard about, or most of us anyway, have heard about the Hope Solo case. 2 parallel cases of professional athletes getting in trouble for being violent. One, of course, being a man, and the other being a woman. One is a football player, the other one is a soccer player, which is, I guess, kind of a football light player. Anyway, Ray Rice clocked his fiancée in an elevator. He rounded on her and put her down for the count, and then he was caught on video dragging her body, her unconscious body, out of the elevator. Looks pretty bad for Ray Rice. Of course, there were extenuating circumstances. I'm not going to get into that, because I'm not here to talk about who's guilty and who's not guilty, or who or how guilty they are, or anything like that. None of that is what interests me. But anyway, going on to Hope Solo. Hope Solo was drunk one evening, and she physically attacked her sister and her 17-year-old nephew. Yeah, something was going on in that house, and they even got the 911 police call recorded, and I had the link for that I was going to give you, but I haven't got it now. Oh, that's terrible. Anyway, so Hope Solo apparently, allegedly did something violent. Ray Rice allegedly did something violent. Ray Rice has been suspended from his position in the NFL. He cannot play football now. However, Hope Solo has not been suspended. She's still soccering away as usual, and she's got some kind of a world record that she's going for, and they don't want to spoil her chance at that world record. I don't know much about soccer or football, but anyway, what we appear to have here is a double standard. We have a man who was treated severely for his violence toward a woman, or just his violence in general, I suppose. And we have another case of a woman being violent. You could call both of these cases domestic violence, but Hope is getting off rather lightly compared to Ray Rice. Okay, so there's a double standard. Some journalists out there have remarked upon this, called attention to it, and put that under the spotlight and posed the question in public, well, why the double standard? However, there are other writers, other journalists who say, well, it doesn't matter, the two cases are not comparable. So we have the feminist critical side on the one side, and we have the ones who are towing the feminist party line on the other side. Okay, and a good case in point for the latter would be, what's her name? Amanda Hess, who wrote an article in Slate.com, which again I cannot link you to because I haven't got the link anymore. But she's a radical feminist, and she says exactly what you would say, or what you think she would say. He's saying it's a stupid comparison, it's a false equivalence, all kinds of, intellectual handy-dandy there to somehow get Hope Solo off the hook and keep Ray Rice on the hook. And I'm not going to dwell too much on Amanda Hess. But the really interesting point right now is the article in Jezebel, which I mentioned and which I have linked. I do have a link to that. This article, written by Erin Gloria Ryan of Jezebel, basically, briefly, sums up the case, and then finally, Erin Gloria Ryan comes down on the side against Hope Solo. She says, records be damned, Hope Solo screwed up. Solo's case highlights the fact that domestic violence isn't always a man headbutting a woman and breaking her nose because she refused him sex. Sometimes it's a woman calling her nephew too fat to be an athlete and then physically attacking him. Sometimes it's not a professional athlete. Sometimes it's your neighbor. And no matter who it is, it's not a matter that should be minimized or ignored. So she's saying that Hope Solo should be suspended from her soccer league and shouldn't be playing soccer anymore. So that's something. We have a feminist from Jezebel, no less, coming down against a woman, saying in effect that a woman, at least in this one case, a woman should be held morally accountable, treated like a moral agent. Boy, that's really something. This is unusual. And then we have some feminists who are coming down on the side of Hope Solo and trying to get her off the hook. But we have this one feminist here who's breaking ranks and saying, no, make Hope Solo face the music. You know what they're doing here? They're just trying to repair feminism's public image. And why are they doing that? It's because feminism is now feeling the heat from all of us non-feminist critics who have been pounding it left, right, and center for some time now. Feminism is feeling the heat, and it's beginning to crack, and there are some feminists like Gloria Ryan here who evidently feel they have to do something along the line of damage control. So that's what we see happening. And interestingly, in the reader comments section immediately following this article, we have a comment from a commenter who goes by the name of Burner7753, and the comment, I read it to you now. Read that, MRAs? Aaron and Cindy, both self-identifying women. Oh, by the way, Cindy is Cindy Boren from the Washington Post. Aaron and Cindy, both self-identifying women, would like another self-identifying woman to be held to the same, albeit unfavorable, standards that are being held to other men. That's what she says, other men.
Whoop-de-doo, we've got a whole crew of them.
Oh, yes, a whole crew of what, other men?
Oh, we got a whole crew of women who want women to be held up to the same standard.
Oh, of course, they're called Women Against Feminism, and that's just for starters. Standards that are being held to other men. And what's the name of this concept? All together now, feminism. James, I trust that you're savvy enough to see what's happening there.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, they're gonna widen their definition of feminism as much as they can, which is exactly what Emma Watson tried to do.
She didn't get very far with that, did she?
No, she did. She did not, especially when she said that men should be able to act vulnerable and be human.
Oh, like they're not, like they just want to be vulnerable and they're not human already.
Right, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I don't act like a woman, then I'm not human.
If I don't act like a woman, if I don't act abnormally sensitive, then I'm what, a monster?
Well,
I don't know.
You're not human.
I'm not, not human, okay, not human.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we see a trend toward feminists trying to put together a new, kinder, gentler feminism that sometimes holds women morally accountable. Okay, that's a fine trend, but you know what, feminists? You got a long way to go. You got years and years to make up for. Now, I want to see you doing this regularly, consistently, all the time. And I want to see you doing a whole lot of other things too. And when I get time for it, I'll make up a list and present it to you. Feminism has got a lot of things it's got to do, a lot of things, in order to redeem itself for all of its past sins and transgressions, which have piled up over the years. So there they are, trying to say that feminism holds women morally accountable, which is a crock of baloney. Feminism does no such thing. Furthermore, feminism cannot do any such thing. If feminism really started holding women morally accountable, I mean seriously, consistently, straight down the line, all the time, it would very quickly spell the end of feminism. And why is that, you ask? Well, because, as we know, feminism is the project to increase the power of women. And if you want to increase power, anybody's power, one of the things you got to do is you got to remove moral accountability from that person. Once you remove moral accountability from somebody, then the sky's the limit as far as increasing their power. You can just increase their power on and on and on into infinity until hell freezes over, because nothing like morality or decent behavior is standing in your way. And, well, that's why feminists have such a problem with holding women morally accountable, or calling women out when they do bad things. That's why every time a woman does some horrible, spectacularly bad thing and it makes headlines, the feminists fall all over each other to excuse her. This is a consistent pattern of behavior, and if you've been studying feminism and feminists as long as I have, and some of us have, you will have seen this pattern playing itself out time and time again. So, Jezebel, in one little snippet here, has held a woman morally accountable. And I'm not really interested in who's guilty or who isn't, or how guilty Ray Rice is, or how guilty Hope Solo is. All I want to point out here, the only takeaway I'm looking at, is what's happening within the ranks of the feminist community. They are now feeling like they're under the gun to change their image. So this is a trend that's worth watching, worth keeping your eye on. Let's see if it grows. And I think that wraps it up. Now I've got to fill out about another 40 minutes in this hour. So I've just lined up a couple of old pieces of writing of mine, and I thought I would just read them off, pretty much verbatim. Here we go. This is from a piece I wrote, about 2 years ago, called Worth-Based Entitlement. I find no good reason to believe that women are uniquely oppressed or that their sufferings in life transcend the common lot of humanity. And more, I can see a strong case that men have it worse in many ways. But feminist theory maintains that women as a group are oppressed by men as a group, and specifically names women as a political sex class. Furthermore, feminist preaching for many years has openly incited women to see themselves in such terms. Such is the sisterhood trope. Furthermore, the last half-century has witnessed a mushrooming growth of women's advocacy groups, lobbying groups, government bureaus, and all manner of special services for women, both public and private. But it doesn't end with blind favoritism toward women. No, the state of matters takes a malignant turn when you consider that female citizens presently enjoy disproportionate power to compromise the well-being of male citizens. As simply as we can put it, women have the power to lie about men with impunity in a way that seriously harms them. And that power, being vested in laws and institutions, becomes a political power and makes women a political class. Remember that. Women are a political class. To put this another way, it is not women, but men who are oppressed. Oppression, as feminist theory informs us, is structural. It is rooted not in the power of individuals, but in the power of institutions made disproportionately available to some groups and not others. And when the disfavored group feels the institutionally based power of the favored group like a boot on its neck, only then may we correctly say that oppression is taking place. So that is why men, not women, are the oppressed group in today's civilization. Because the power of women to harm men is embodied in laws and institutions. In other words, structurally, if we are to hold the feminists to the letter of their own law, we must insist that they acknowledge this. What we have related here tilts the political board against men as a group. In light of this, we feel no hesitation in stating that men as a group have no political obligation to go to bat for women as a group. Under the circumstances, why should they? Rationally speaking, men would do best to look out for themselves as individuals and to form contracts of mutual assistance in order to multiply the benefit. No consideration, either moral or utilitarian, can inspire me with any sense of duty toward women as a group. This would be true even in the best of times, but is doubly true at present when men are, yes, an oppressed class. Therefore, any individual woman I meet will get special consideration from me only as an individual, and only if she proves herself worthy. And clearly, some will prove themselves worthier than others. This way of thinking entails no misogyny, because it entails no opinion, either good or ill, about women as a group. In order to be a misogynist, you need to have a bad opinion about women as a group. Okay? That's a very important point that gets glossed over quite a bit, but we ought to keep it in mind. Now, misogyny means disaffection toward women irrespectively. There you go, irrespectively. Hence, even if you were to form a bad opinion about every female person on earth, it would not entail misogyny if you had weighed each case on its merits. You would merely harbor a bad opinion about this woman and that woman and that woman and the next woman, but not about women. Do you see the difference there? Do you see the distinction? The individual and the collective? All right. I am far from having evaluated every woman on earth, and I know my life is too short to do that. So I am content to say that I harbor no opinion, either good or ill, about the huge majority of women, but that as I make their acquaintances, I will evaluate them one at a time. Then, according to the case, I will form a social contract binding myself to specific behaviors. Upon that base alone, I will decide what, if anything, I owe to the individual in question. The individual in question. Make note of that. In this, I do just as I would do with any man. I am entirely even-handed. Yes, characterization by merit is a first principle, and it frames my conduct toward everyone I meet. Nobody, man or woman, is entitled to anything save what I, by my good pleasure, bountifully proffer. And calculation of merit weighs considerably in that dispensation. In short, I study the manifested qualities of other people one at a time in living form, and I work from there. But prudential considerations are always uppermost in my thinking, with an eye to rational self-preservation, grounded in a prescience of natural consequences. My policy then entails a strategizing sense of the Kantian hypothetical imperative. If you want the world to be X, you must do Y and Z. The reason is that if you fail to do Y and Z, then by natural consequence, the world will not be X. So in the end, although my conduct is governed purely by a moral law within myself, that moral law is framed by the considerations which I have sketched above. I should add that it never hurts to get on my good side. Deal squarely and rightly with me, and I shall be the truest friend that you could ever ask for. Otherwise, well, things might get sticky. Feminism views women as an entitled class and fails to hold them accountable as individuals. I find this both pernicious and unworkable, and for that reason, among many others, I reject feminism as a movement and as an ideology. I disavow it. I disclaim ownership in it. I repudiate the cultural narrative which it imposes, and I wash my hands of any project predicated on any aspect of that narrative. Briefly then, I am not a feminist, and no power in the universe will force me to become one. Finally, no woman I shall ever meet may exercise any claim upon me in the name of feminism or under the color of feminism in any form. She is entitled to nothing until she proves to me that she is worth something. And such is worth-based entitlement. And on that note, James, I think it's time for a music break. Let's roll it.
All right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back from the music break. This is episode number 20 of the Vanguard Report. I am fidelbogen, your host for this episode. My fellow host is not with us tonight, unfortunately. Nick, we miss you, but you'll be back for episode 21, I'm sure. Anyway, I am trying to put this episode together as I go along. I lost the entire script for the episode, as I already mentioned earlier, and I had to put this together on the fly in the last 45 minutes. Anyway, we'd like to open up the line now to callers, and the number is 214-272-0408. This is the Vanguard Report. You can call in at 214-272-0408. Just bear in mind, we don't have call queue anymore. It's first come, first serve, and one at a time. So if you want to dial in, be like Johnny on the spot with that speed dial. Do it right now. Do it anytime you want. I'm going to go on and read some more things. And don't worry about interrupting me. That's fine. Interrupt me if you want. Call in if you got anything you want to talk about. And now, for the second half of the episode, I'm going to read something, another piece of writing of mine. This is called, What is the Non-Feminist Revolution? Now, non-feminist revolution is a term you may have heard floating around here and there. Basically, it just describes everything that's happening, the whole process, historical process of the world and society in general turning against feminism and becoming more and more clear and more crystallized and more focused in that process. And this is what I wrote about the non-feminist revolution, trying to clarify just what the non-feminist revolution is. What is the non-feminist revolution? The non-feminist revolution is not a movement, but a largely unconscious demographic upwelling of resistance to feminism and its consequences. It is an objectively historical process, spontaneous, organic, and amoral. Its center is everywhere, its perimeter is nowhere, and its parts do not always accord with each other. We did not instigate this revolution. We merely recognized it and gave it a name. We have chosen the name revolution not because that sounds cool and glamorous, but because no better terminology, quite honestly, occurs to us. A revolution is a thing which overturns or abrogates a system of established authority, and does so without seeking permission. And that's very important. A revolution does not go through proper channels. It does what it does without seeking permission at all. It just does what it does. That's the nature of a revolution. And yes, it would be an ironic kind of revolution that should say to the targeted regime, "May I overthrow you?" No, that's one of the salient features of a revolution. Any kind of revolution is they don't ask permission. They just go ahead and do it. So the non-feminist revolution is just like that. It doesn't ask permission. The non-feminist revolution works to reverse the entire spectrum of adverse consequences which feminist innovation has introduced into the world. And by this means, it nullifies the feminist project in toto. It works as a primordial energy upon a distributed range of attack points, and not all of the human beings involved will intellectualize the meaning of their actions. That is, they might not be aware that they are attacking feminism as such. They might only be reacting to conditions in their own lives, yet the combined effect of their actions, will undermine the feminist power structure from many directions. This is a cultural insurgency from all quarters. As you might guess, the non-feminist revolution does not compose an identifiable human target group, much as the feminists and their cohorts would like to turn the non-feminist revolution into an identifiable group of people. clearly marked people like Elliot Rodger or whatever. No, that's not what it is. You cannot encapsulate or target the non-feminist revolution. You can't line it up in the crosshairs. It's not just some little narrow point on the map. It's everywhere. It's ambient. It does not compose an identifiable human target group. It has no clear demographic profile and no membership roster. Rather, it operates as a cloud of forces manifesting through human actions which can sometimes be politically linked to each other, but other times not. Now, the people lazily called MRAs are not the non-feminist revolution. They are only a conspicuous manifestation within the non-feminist revolution. They're rather like the Great Red Spot on Jupiter. And like the Great Red Spot, the MRA vortex will eventually dissipate. And yet, the Jovian turbulence that originally spawned it will continue. The boundary between MRA and non-MRA becomes meaningless when you consider the holistic nature of the non-feminist revolution. So-called MRAs are on a continuum with every form of non-feminist reality there is. And the feminist obsession with MRAs misses the forest for the trees. This myopia shall be their undoing. Ever since recognizing the existence of the non-feminist revolution, our interest has been to harness the energy of it so as to make it politically efficient. To make the non-feminist revolution politically efficient means both to minimize the transit time from a feminist world to a post-feminist world, and to minimize any chaos and human misery that might go along with this. That's what we want to do. We want to minimize the chaos and human misery. We want to prevent people like Elliot Rodger from happening. You know, that's what we're all about. We want to keep the bad stuff to a minimum. We're just a messenger, and we're trying to predict, and hopefully by predicting forestall these bad things. So the project to harness the non-feminist revolution is broadly termed counter-feminism. Sound familiar? It is the mountaintop view. It's the game board view, the vanguard view. And yes, a revolution needs a vanguard if it is to be distinguished from chaos. Gut reactions might arise from broad masses of people in their collective gut, but politically efficient plans assuredly do not. Therefore, somebody might as well give it a go, because if they don't, well, somebody else will. Please note that feminism is a utopian project, not unlike the pursuit of a rainbow. Some might call it dystopian in practice, but in the minds of its participants, it aims at some perfected future state of life. I mean, even Mary Daly was aiming at a perfected future state of life in her own mind, all right? She was a utopian. Counter-feminism, however, is not utopian. It aims only at the disappearance of feminism, and it harbors no blueprint for any perfected post-feminist state of life. We expect the world after feminism to be flawed and stamped with the greasy thumbprints of human nature, as all of human history has been. Counter-feminism considers both feminism and non-feminism to be flawed conditions, but counts the latter, non-feminism, preferable to the former, preferable to feminism. In the end, the role of counter-feminism is simply that of midwife to a post-feminist consciousness. The project of feminism is to increase the power of women with no specified limit. More tersely stated, feminism is female supremacism, since that term describes the logical outcome of such a project. You keep increasing the power of women and coming back and increasing it some more and increasing it some more and removing moral accountability from women so that the frontier of power is wide open for them. Well, what you will finally end up with is, I can only call it female supremacism. And this is not a conspiracy theory. I don't think that a bunch of people sat down in a room somewhere and figured this all out. I think that maybe there were such meetings in rooms here and there, but the vast majority of feminists never sat down in that room anywhere. They're just following their instincts and following their feelings and falling into step with each other as birds of a feather who flock together. That's pretty much all it is. However, it is not amiss to suspect that the unconstrained growth of female power will generate natural consequences, and that these consequences are not bound to be pleasant or tidy. Okay? The unconstrained growth of female power, the empowerment of women with no limitation, no cap, no bounds or restraints, will generate consequences that are not guaranteed to be pleasant or tidy. This describes the character of the non-feminist revolution as well, okay? It is the natural order of life bursting chaotically through the structure of feminist innovation and reasserting itself. So this non-feminist revolution is sort of a double-edged thing. It's amoral, it's going to be turbulent, it's going to be chaotic, and things are going to get broken, and there's going to be a lot of bruised feelings, to say the least. But we need to understand the nature of it so that we can somehow work with it and channel it and possibly divert it to one side or another so that the bad stuff is kept to a minimum. It's a force of nature, and forces of nature can sometimes be controlled or mitigated in one way or another. And that's what we need to think about. Like when water breaks through a dam and roars away downstream, sweeping all before it, the scene is chaotic. But it does not remain that way, for the chaos is a healing crisis. Here we go. It's a healing crisis. It's the natural consequence of something that should never have been permitted to develop in the first place. And at last, the water will settle down into a tranquil stream again. And it is even so with the non-feminist revolution and its chaotic manifestation. Forces of nature can be that way, especially when they are unnaturally pent up in defiance of common sense. These things are predictable. And political revolutions follow a similar pattern. It is best to initiate reforms well before the crisis comes to a fever pitch, because if you wait too long, you get dérapage. You get Jacobinism and sansculottism and reigns of terror and all manner of beastly, untidy unpleasantness. So, let our endeavor therefore be to ease the transition to a post-feminist world, to ease feminism out the door, in other words, and keep the bad stuff to a minimum. That's what we want. We want to minimize all bad things. We want to minimize suffering. We don't want people like Elliot Rodger to be popping up all over the landscape for all sorts of chaotic reasons. We don't like that. We're not down with that sort of thing. We want to stop that. Okay, we want to put a pretty hard cap on stuff like that. And more feminism will just bring us more of that kind of bad stuff, and we'd like to avoid that. So, in other words, we want to reduce the non-feminist revolution to the most politically efficient order possible. And folks, that about wraps it up for today's thoughts on the non-feminist revolution. Call line is still open for anybody who wants to call in for any reason. 214-272-0408. And it looks like we've got about 8 minutes left in the program, James?
Yes, that's about right.
All right, we've got about 8 minutes. God, I hate dead air. Dead air sucks. But I was going to mention something. We've been talking about this for the last 3 or 4 episodes. We are looking for a feminist, a self-identified, self-declared feminist who come and appear on the program with me and Nick. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. What we're doing here is simply presenting our points of view to each other, and we are discussing the topic of coexistence. Can feminism and the absence of feminism, non-feminism, can those two principles, those two forces coexist, cohabit side by side on the same planet, in the same world? Is it possible for both of them to reach a point of balance where one is not at the expense of the other? And I'm thinking mainly here of feminism being at the expense of the rest of the world, because historically that has been the pattern. I hate to say it, but feminism has been very much the aggressor here, and I would say the primary aggressor. But I won't be talking about that on the program that we have in mind. We'll just be discussing, well, pretty much laying our cards on the table and talking about this is what feminism is, this is what non-feminism is, this is what we want, this is what we want to work towards, how can we accommodate ourselves to each other. And so the rule is that, no, we're not here to convert anybody, we're not here to debate, we're not here to argue, we're not here to talk about who's right and who's wrong, we're just here to make ourselves clear to each other, saying this is where we stand, and where can we go from here? What is to be done from here? And that's all I've got in mind. And we are looking for a feminist who is willing to come on the show and do that. It's a, well, rather brave project, I would suppose, for some people anyway. I don't think there's many feminists that would want to take us up on that, but I know there's somebody out there somewhere, and if we keep putting the word out, we're eventually going to make contact with that person. So anybody out there listening right now, put the word out through any channels that you know of. We are looking for a feminist to appear on the show. That person can get a hold of us, and we can talk about this before we go ahead with it. And we can make any clarifications that we need to make. So we can be reached at our email address for the Vanguard Report. And that is, I don't remember what Q number it is. The email address is USA at, never mind, I'm sorry. Let's start over again. The email address is Vanguard Report at USA.com. One more time, that's Vanguard Report at USA.com. I think that's in the chat window right now. Spread that email address out to anybody who could spread it to anybody who could spread it to anybody else who could eventually put it in the hands of a feminist or any number of feminists. We are looking for candidates. And on that note, James, what do we got left now? About 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay, well, it's time to wrap it up then. I'll repeat our email address one more time for the Vanguard Report. That is Vanguard Report at USA.com. And as always, if you haven't read the Poison Manifesto, folks, that is it. That is the book, all 9 pages of it, all 5,000 words of it, everything you need to know, basically, except for the details, of course, but everything you need to know is in there in those 9 pages. Go to cfproject.blog.com. That's cfproject.blog.com. You go there and you will find the Poison Manifesto online for your reading pleasure. At the end of that document, you will find a link where you can download a PDF copy of this same Poison Manifesto. So go there and read it. If you haven't read it, share it with anybody else. That is it. That is the book. That is the official manual of the revolution, or the roadmap of the revolution, as I like to call it. It puts you on the map. It marks the spot with X and says, you are here. And I think the brick wall of death is getting close enough, James. So, on that note, I know this has been a rather rough and hectic episode. It wasn't the way I planned it, but I hope it was worth your while. So, everybody, remember, until next week, remember, never forget, feminism is what we say it is. Ciao, everybody.